You're not learning, you're avoiding the work. And I know this because I did the exact same thing. I used to spend all day researching, watching business videos, productivity videos, self-improvement, always taking notes, opening up new tabs, but nothing about my life changed. When I stopped hiding behind research and turned everything I learned into output, my life changed completely. I built a profitable online business, ran 11 marathons in 11 months, became conversationally fluent in Spanish, and became a digital nomad all in under a year by actually building my dream life, not planning it. Now, I'm not saying that podcasts or YouTube videos or courses are bad. They're all extremely useful if it changes what you do next. But if you watch 10 videos so you don't have to post, build, ship, record, do anything, then you haven't escaped this cheap dopamine, you've just upgraded the disguise. In this video, I will show you the 4 levels of escaping cheap dopamine, why most people get stuck with fake productivity, and exactly what to replace it with instead. When people try and remove cheap dopamine, the very first thing they do is they just replace it with more cheap dopamine. This is level 1 here, because fundamentally, not much is changing whatsoever. Now, you might think, okay, TikTok is terrible. This is ruining my attention span. This is taking all my time. This is shocking. Correct. But all you do is replace this with more cheap dopamine. Now, this might be binge watching shows. This might be consuming social media. This might be playing video games. Whatever it is, all you're doing is replacing one source of cheap dopamine with another. And this is not going to be very beneficial. The only small thing that this improves is it may improve your focus slightly. If you're someone who spends a huge amount of time on short form content, something that provides you hundreds of contexts per hour, and you replace that with something a little bit less stimulating, like binge watching shows, believe it or not, would be less stimulating, or things like playing video games, it might take your attention span from terrible to just bad. Of course, this is not the end game, but this will be a slight improvement. That is it as far as the improvements go, because realistically, your time wasted, nothing changes here. You're still wasting a huge amount of time. All you've done is replace one time-wasting activity with another. And in terms of your goal progress, well, in both situations, you're not progressing in any way towards your goals. Doing all of this cheap dopamine activities, in no way is this progressing you towards your goals. So this is fundamentally level 1. This is where the average person is sitting when they try and remove cheap dopamine. Level 2 is where most people get stuck long term. This is where you can sit in an absolute abyss. This is a horrible place to be, and I think for most people, this is where you're currently sitting. And this is fake productivity. This is where most people are sitting right now, where you're replacing your cheap dopamine with learning. Research. You might spend hours and hours and hours accumulating all this knowledge, accumulating all this information, but the big caveat here is you're researching without taking any action. Nothing about your behaviors, nothing about your actions is changing. You're just doing a bunch of research, learning a lot, but nothing about your life will change if you just stay here. Fundamentally, for you to achieve your goals, there's a set of actions that you have to take. Researching is not a set of actions. Researching allows you to identify the actions you have to take, but if you never take those actions, nothing will change. I promise you, you will be the same person if you just spend all day researching and take 0 action. Now, this might be you on YouTube watching some sort of informational content. This might be you reading books. This might be you taking some sort of program or course. Either way, you're just acquiring information, but it stays there. Nothing about your actions changes. There is nothing fundamentally wrong with any of these activities. The problem is how we're currently using them that results in this fake productivity. Now, one of the small benefits this will provide is it will improve your focus slightly. If you're going from consuming things that are purely designed to provide you entertainment, to be incredibly enjoyable, then this is going to be a huge sensory experience, not going to be very good for your focus levels. If you replace this with content that was designed for education purpose, generally it's a little bit slower. Generally, it's designed to actually teach you something. So it's probably going to be a little bit better for your attention span. So your focus might go from bad to decent. This is still not the end game, but it is a small improvement. The huge problem in this fake progress stage is the time wasted. So your time wasted really isn't going to change that much whatsoever. While originally there is no disguise here, you know, okay, I'm just doing something for entertainment purposes. This is a bit of a waste of time. Here, you think that you're being productive, you think that you're learning something, but really you're wasting your time in the exact same way. See, if you consume a bunch of information but you don't action it, all that's going to happen is that over time, that information is slowly going to start going away from your memory. If you haven't actioned it and if you haven't changed your behaviors, nothing about your life will change, and eventually you're going to forget about that information. I remember a few years ago when I was in my 9-to-5 job, all I wanted to do was be an entrepreneur. So I would spend all day listening to business podcasts. On my way to work, I would listen to business podcasts. In my lunch break, I would listen to business podcasts. On my way home, I would listen to business podcasts. All the time listening to these business podcasts. I would learn things like how to scale to a 50-person sales team, all this information about business. And guess what? A lot of that was completely gone because I did not action any of this information. It didn't store in my long-term memory. It just went in one ear and out the other. I felt really productive doing it, but guess what? At the end of the day, I was still working a 9-to-5 job. I still was an entrepreneur because I wasn't taking the action of building a business. And these hundreds of hours of business content, only a very, very small part of that I still remember. Most of that is completely gone from my memory. Now, in terms of your goal progress, you might see a slight improvement because you're going from doing something that has no relationship to your goals whatsoever to at least learning a few things that might be useful when you decide to start taking action. So there might be a slight benefit here, but the benefit is extremely low. When we look at this, there's not a whole lot of difference between you just spending all day consuming entertainment and you consuming all this informational content. This is the big bottleneck that everyone sits at because they think they're being productive, they're told they're being productive, but nothing about their lives is going to change. It's not until we step into level 3 that we see big jumps in our cheap dopamine replacement and we materially change our lives. Level 3 is execution learning, and it is the exact same as level 2. The only difference is there is action taking involved here. At the other end of this learning sits you actually applying what you've learned and taking action. This is where you're going to see big changes. Because rather than acquiring all this information, feeling productive, storing it in short-term memory and forgetting about it, you're acquiring all this information and actioning it, taking it from the theoretical into the practical. And when we do this, not only are we taking actions that are going to move us towards our goals, but we're implementing the knowledge into real life so that our brain actually wants to hold on to it. If our brain can't use the information, it's very quickly going to forget about it. So this is where we're actually learning. Now, there is a massive jump that's going to happen here between level 2 and level 3. First of all, with our focus here, your focus is going to go from decent to strong, to really strong, because you're not sitting there receiving hours and hours and hours of informational content about hundreds of different topics. You're sitting there receiving informational content that you can apply, going out and actually applying it. That means that you're not exposing yourself to hundreds of different contexts. You're exposing yourself to a specific problem and you're actually applying change. This is going to be very good for our focus. The big one here is your time wasted goes from huge, massive, nothing changing to very little. If you're applying the information that you're acquiring here, then the time that you actually waste is going to be extremely small. Your time along with your attention are your two most valuable resources. And if you can take your time wasted from absolutely huge to very little, then you're going to increase the speed that you achieve your goals significantly. This is going to take your goal progress to go from extremely slow, spending all day just researching and not taking action, to extremely fast, where you spend this time researching what is required and instantly implement and take action. Action is what gets us to our goals in the first place, so our goal progress, of course, is going to go up a lot. Now, level 3 is an extremely strong place to sit in for replacing cheap dopamine, and we want to spend a bit of time here forever. But level 4 is where we want to be spending the majority of our time. If we can sit in level 4, we're going to make progress that seems impossible. Level 4 is execution, and this is where we want to be spending the majority of our time. Level 4 is really replacing our online entertainment with doing the actions required to get us to our goals. The reason this is so important is because we know that for us to achieve our goal, there's a set of actions that we have to do. So the more time that we can spend doing these actions, the faster we're going to achieve this goal. The reason that level 3 is so important is because it informs us on what these actions are. What are the actions required for me to achieve my goal? What are the actions required for me to achieve this North Star? But very quickly, this should just become you taking those actions. This is going to take your focus from strong, a really good position at level 3, to absolutely insane. Because what are you focusing on? Well, you're focusing on the actual tasks required to get you to your goal. You're not focusing on learning random things. You're not focusing on online entertainment. You're focusing on the things required for you to get to your goal. In terms of the time wasted, well, this is essentially none. If you're just spending time doing the actions required for you to get to your goal, then you're not wasting any time whatsoever. Of course, if we're wasting zero time, then we're using our time extremely effectively. We're using our most valuable resource extremely effectively, and we're going to progress extremely fast. We're going to progress at an insane rate, not just fast, absolutely insane. And this is why we want to be spending the majority of our time in this phase. So if we zoom out here and think, okay, I want to replace cheap dopamine with something meaningful, exactly what should I be doing? I would think about it like this. The first thing to do here is sit in the execution learning phase. This is where we acquire the information to inform our actions. Now, you're probably here right now, you're consuming a YouTube video, you're consuming information. The only way to turn this from level 2 fake productivity to level 3 execution learning is by actually taking an action at the end of this video. Now, this could be you reading books, this could be you consuming a course, this could be you consuming podcasts or YouTube videos. Whatever this is, you're receiving information, you're learning. But you're only learning if you're taking action at the end of this. Really, this level 3 execution learning phase is really to inform you for the level 4, for when you're actually taking execution. The level 3 execution learning phase should be able to tell you, okay, these are the exact actions that I have to take. And then from here, we want to really be spending the majority of our time in level 4. This is where we get the best returns on our time. This is where we progress the fastest. This is where we're actually moving towards our goals. We want to be spending a huge amount of our time in level 4. What you're going to notice here is that if you spend enough time in level 4, you're going to keep progressing. You're going to keep progressing to the next levels. And what's going to happen is you're going to encounter new and better problems. And very quickly, you're going to have to identify this problem. Now, this won't take long. This should be very, very obvious. But what this does is this creates this feedback cycle here where you have to come back to the level 3 phase, execution learning, and you have to figure out, how do I solve this current problem? How do I solve this current bottleneck? So this will take you a small amount of time to figure out, okay, what is the current deficiency? How do I solve this problem? And then this should take you straight back into level 4, which is the actual execution here. If you keep running this flywheel, you're going to progress really, really quickly. You're going to hardly waste any time whatsoever. And you're going to find, okay, now that I've gotten rid of cheap dopamine, I haven't just replaced this with more fake productivity. I haven't just replaced this with consuming a bunch of information. I've replaced this with, okay, learning and taking action towards my goals, achieving actual outcomes in my life rather than just acquiring a bunch of information just in case rather than just in time. Now, if you're an online entrepreneur and you want to enter this execution learning phase, you can join my free school community here. The very first thing that we do is we get very clear about, okay, what is your North Star and what are the exact actions required for you to achieve this goal? So very quickly, you can enter this level 4 execution phase. We don't spend a whole lot of time consuming information. I don't have hundreds of hours of informational content for you to get through. It's very specific and very actionable. So if you want to join this school community, then I'll leave a link in the description below for that. For everyone else, if you want to figure out, okay, I want to get rid of cheap dopamine, but how do I do it? Then you can check out this video right here. So I'll either see you in the Modern Monk community or I'll see you in that video. Cheers.